as I said, like looking at this butterfly, for example, if I grab his wing, the animation of this wing is really just me taking this, like putting all of these brushstrokes into one group here, and then being able to basically move this pivot of this group down there to where the wing sort of touches the body, and then I can freely rotate that. And the way I do this animation is literally just in real time, grabbing the wing and then moving it like this, and then it is just done. It is it's gonna get recorded in real time, and there's no rig involved. It's just the proper grouping and basically motion capturing myself, my own movement of my hand. That's it.
Hi, and welcome to the TD Meetup. My name is Alexander Richter. I'm a technical director for visual effects, animation, and games, and I worked at companies like WeatherFX and Framestore on Avatar: The Way of Water and Monsters at Work. And today I wanted to introduce you to our monthly event, the TD Meetup, where we meet each month to talk about all the current topics in visual effects, animation, and games. And it's perfect for people who are interested in the technical field and who want or are currently technical director. Today, we want to talk about virtual reality. And the reason that we came up with this topic, first thing, I saw Dan at the FMX, so I think that was a strong catalysator on that one. He presented some virtual reality art and his course and so on. And so I was thinking, hey, this is a topic that kind of got for a little bit kind of forgotten in the last few years. There was this big trend of virtual reality a few years ago. I think that you probably also remember FMX. There was even a whole kind of chapter of FMX just going into virtual reality. A lot of demos especially was there presenting. And obviously there were a lot of tools coming out, the Vision Pro, Apple, Oculus, and so on. But they kind of left the limelight a little bit, mostly because the project failed, a lot of demos were played. And so it was always a little bit this kind of hype that kind of fizzled out a little bit. At the same time, I think I see that there is implementation of virtual reality and maybe a little bit sometimes a forgetting of that this actually exists in a very feasible and practical environment. And I think especially in terms of visualization, in industry, in planning a building or something, planning a city, I think that is where, for example, one of the strong things where we as maybe VFX animation maybe forget, they actually start to implement that because it's such a cost-saving measurement. And so one of the things that we want to do today is we want to dive into virtual reality. Dan has something prepared. He is an artist and VR director, and he works with that technology for years now. And so I wanted to dive into that. A few things just quickly where I see virtual reality becoming something that at least we think about. Basically, one is obviously the Previz. If you work in set extension, it's always to know good where the 3D part is for the actor, for the director, planning camera movement, preparing things, saving a lot of costs basically. So that is really, really important. And that's probably also the part where it is specifically for our industry pretty important. Another niche that is, especially interesting for artists is making actual art, 3D art basically in there. You can do sculpting in there, for example, which for some people feel more natural than going into, mouse sculpting basically. That can be a little bit more 3D feeling. And then there are obviously things like experience, like, you can experience at your home, a VR, AR kind of experience where you can interact with things, work in it, entertainment, and so on. So I think there's definitely something like this, and things like Half-Life Alyx, which showed actually the fantastic way of how to use it. Even though always movement is a very difficult thing in VR, moving along, especially like ego perspective, like moving and without like sickness and so on. But you also, in terms of experience, you can have, for example, documentaries and stuff, which is also very interesting. If you, for example, there are sometimes situations where they recorded the Fukushima in 360. So they went through the city and recorded everything. And I think that is something you cannot experience in just a 2D screen basically as much, than being part of a city, of a space, of anywhere. So that can be a very interesting part of where we can go basically in the future. let's us dive a little bit deeper and see what Dan came up with, what he's working with VR. The idea basically is for you to show what is possible with VR, to show where you personally maybe can use it at the same time as an artist, as a producer, as a technical person, because I think there is a potential with this technology, and if we keep that in mind, we can bring that basically home. Dan and I, we were both at the Film Academy. That's also where we know each other. We just recently met at the last FMX. That's where we bonded back again. And I thought it would be great to invite him here and join us and talk a little bit about his experience as an artist and director with virtual reality.
Hi, everyone. I am Dan. I am a VR artist. I'm a founder and, director. And I'm, trying my best to kind of, as Alex said, kind of bring VR back into the limelight, making it unforgotten, basically, and kind of trying to showcase what VR art creation tools like Quill, the one that I'm using, are capable of, and how you can implement them in many different ways in our industry and beyond. So today I'm going to give you a little bit of an introduction into kind of the general space of VR and VR animation, and what I specifically was doing over the last couple of years. And then I'm going to jump into Quill, and I'm going to do some live painting. I'm going to go through some of my files, and maybe we can just, if there's some questions from you, I can maybe showcase some specific things that could help you in your workflow in Quill. And, we can kind of work together in giving you the best sort of introduction into VR as we can. But first, before I go into Quill, I want to give you the story of how I basically started out as a student, as a CG generalist, not really knowing where to end up in our industry, and how I now am sort of a pioneer in the VR space. So quite a journey that I've had over the last 7-8 years. And as we said, we both actually started we studied at the Animation Institute this way around. And I started out as a CG generalist, as a CG sculptor. I was working in ZBrush back in the day, 10 years ago, modeling random creatures, aliens, dinosaurs, that sort of stuff. I wanted to go into the VFX industry and do my part. But throughout my studies, I realized I kind of want to be more involved in sort of that early pre-production process, in the actual creative process in storytelling. I want to be a director. I want to tell my own stories, and I want to animate. In my second year during university, I made a little 2D animated film, which got a decent festival run. And I realized, I feel like this is more, my world. Rather than sort of being behind the scenes, doing my little, sculptings, I want to tell actual stories. And then in my gap year, I was fortunate enough to, have the opportunity to be a co-director at a children's series called Petsy at Studio Soy, where we directed, or I was involved in 12 episodes, something like that, over the course of 1 year, 3 to 4 episodes at the same time. Alex was actually there as well as a pipeline TD there. And
yes, that's where I already forgot that we worked on that as well.
There we go. So that's where we met properly for the first time and worked together. And it was an amazing time for me to learn. I was a student. I was imposter syndroming hard. I didn't know what I was doing here. I had to tell these amazing world class animators what to do, and I didn't know what I had to do. So I learned quite a lot. But throughout that experience, I also learned that those types of projects, like big teams, big budgets, obviously they are tricky to get, right? It's tricky to get there, especially when you're a student. You don't know where to go from there. And I was wondering, going back to university for my diploma year, are there tools out there that could give me the opportunity, the freedom to do those types of animations, and be more independent rather than having to depend on a big team, having big responsibility and big budgets involved? Couldn't I be just by myself or with a super small team and tell my own stories and be super efficient while doing it? In those couple of weeks where I was dreaming about those tools, I got to know about a guy at Facebook called Goro Fujita, who was starting to develop a VR tool called Quill, together with the developer Inigo Quiles. And they wrote this tool to make a little VR film at Oculus Story Studios, which was underneath Facebook. And then after the studio closed, they stayed at Facebook and kept developing that tool. I was seeing, step by step, like things that he posted about Quill, where you could paint in 3D space in VR, basically like a Photoshop, but in 3D space. And I was super intrigued. But then once he started animating in Quill in a very basic way, sort of like a stop motion way, but once those VR paintings, started moving, I was like, wait, I have to know this guy. I have to get my hands on this tool. And a week after I got, I had that in mind, I got the email that said, hey, Goro Fujita is going to come to the Animation Institute and he's going to have his very first Quill workshop ever at my university. And I was like, okay, I mean, this is meant to be. This is destiny. I'm meant to learn this tool. And so it happened. Within 2 days, I learned about Quill. And back then, 7 years ago, still a very early version of Quill. And one day after that workshop, I was able to do this sort of painting within 1 hour. Oh. My very first Quill painting 7 years ago. And the cool thing about Quill is, as I said, it is basically a Photoshop in 3D space, right? You're painting brush strokes, 3D brush strokes. And not only that, but you can do animated brush strokes in real time. Like all these, like the waterfall that you see there, all these little, particle effects, they are not like simulations or effects like particles. You just paint them. Live recorded 3D brush strokes. And later on, I'm going to show that in real time in Quill. It's really hard to understand and to explain how amazing this is, to be able to do this in real time. Since it was that amazing and I was so intrigued, I kept sharing my work. And since the community was still very small back then, we were sharing our pieces at like Facebook groups, that was before Discord and everything. My work got seen very quickly, and between those amazing artists that were in that small like niche community, me as a little, student who wanted to show some little animations, I got visible very quickly and I got to connect to amazing artists, to teams, and was involved in really cool projects. And one of them was Namu, which happened, even before my diploma project, right in that time. And that is a VR experience, but also a 2D animated short film by the amazing director Eric O, who actually was Oscar nominated while we were working on this film. And it was a super small team, like 5 to 6 people, Pixar animators, Disney people, all working on this, and me, the little student, who knew a little bit about Quill. And this was a really, exciting project about a guy living his life and the tree growing with him and all the memories being, in that tree. And once again, I learned a lot also about how to handle Quill, how to handle such a big project as well. Nick Ladd, who was, another great artist, a Quill artist, was with me on this project. And my responsibility was to paint all these environments. They look like they are painted in Photoshop, but they're all actually painted in Quill, based on an amazing concept artist. And yeah, I was painting those environments, like almost all of them, and also animating them, doing like super cool transitions from one environment to the other. And this is the trailer. There you go. And as you can see, this film was actually produced by Baobab, the biggest VR studio out there back then. And once again, like a dream project for me. And I was still working on my diploma project in the meantime. And while that was happening as well, I met up with, again, like amazing artists, and I grouped up with a couple of other Quill artists. Nick Ladd as well, who was also on this project. Houdini as well, who's actually in the call, funnily enough. And we basically created a little Quill, group of basically the best Quill artists out there that you could get. We were all in a small team, and we gathered and pitched a funny idea to Facebook, to Meta, about an island that is made out of music and colors and amazing little creatures. Funi was the mastermind behind it, who created this world based on a music label called Soda Island. And this was our pitch. We pitched them one episode, said, hey, could we do this? Try what we can do with Quill. And they said, yeah, let's make it much bigger budget and let's make a series out of that. And we were like, yeah, sure, we can try, we can handle that. and I was the director of the first 3 of 7 episodes of this series, Tales from Soda Island. And this is once again another dream project that we could do. The style of like Funi's art direction, very much leaning into the Quill sort of look. And an amazing world that we could explore and write stories about. And each episode we tried more and more like new techniques on how to use Quill and also how to do our way of VR storytelling. And through that, we actually founded Studio Saro, a virtual animation studio, meaning we were also basically scattered across the world. And since also COVID hit, basically 2 months after we founded the studio, we never really met each other face to face. Only years after at a festival, we actually got to meet. So we founded the studio and made a VR series completely in a virtual space, right? This is the trailer.
Whoa!
This was the first VR series entirely created in VR. For us, a super crazy project because we didn't know if the stuff that we had planned is actually doable in Quill. Like a project of this size had never been done before. And as I said, like episode by episode, we had to really test the boundaries, not only of Quill itself as a program, but also in terms of what we can do in VR storytelling, how we want to transition from one scene to the other, and that sort of stuff. And me as a director, having never done a VR experience before, I kind of chose to go by this quote by one of my heroes, Albert Einstein, who said, "Everyone knew it was impossible until a fool who didn't know came along and just did it." So I willingly decided to not watch any other VR content out there, but rather just do my thing and kind of come up with my own style, take from take what I know from 2D video basically and put that into VR and come up with my own style. And as a studio, we really pioneered our way of VR storytelling. Even though in the first episode I started out the way I knew how to make films, right? With a storyboard, with a 2D storyboard, treating the viewer as a camera that I just rotate and keep the camera basically static. And then whenever I want the viewer to look to the right or to the left, I basically just pretend as if I'm rotating the camera and drawing it like that. That's how I started out in the first episode, and very quickly realizing, yeah, I can plan out a story like that, but VR, it's just different, right? You have to plan out for 360 space much differently than you would for a 2D film. It definitely worked out for the first episode, since the camera was very static in this episode, and only the environment was sort of gradually changing. But for the second episode, we were traversing through the entire island with slow camera moves and that sort of stuff. And that would have been impossible to do, or like very hard to do with traditional storyboarding. So already with the second episode, we realized, hey, let's just do all the storyboards, all the layout previs directly in Quill and plan out our stuff this way. This year is the fourth episode. And here you can see like how we went from simple, black and white layout sketches of those scenes, where we could then go in and find interesting camera angles, really just treating the early storyboard phase where you would just do sketches and try out your story and that sort of stuff, and the timing especially, do that already in 3D because it is as fast, because you're basically just sketching in 3D rather than in 2D, and having that freedom to move the camera wherever you want, and then also already from the beginning, from the get-go, define your timing of the movement of the characters, of the camera. This way you are just so much faster because you're basically combining the storyboarding, animatic, and previous phase all in one step, which is amazing and very freeing for you as a director. And one more important thing that, again, I'm going to showcase later in Quill, is that you can puppeteer your objects, your characters, in real time in Quill. So you can basically just grab them with your controllers, with your hands, literally, and move them in space and record that movement, and boom, you just animated your character in real time. And to do that for a previs is amazing, because you can do your previs, you can try out your shots and plan your shots in real time. And you can basically do like 5 iterations of one shot with different timings, different animations within a minute, which I wouldn't know how long it would take me to edit, like try to do that, do different edits and different storyboards. It would take me like hours to do this type of stuff. And once again, I'm gonna showcase that later in Quill directly. And then we had those crazy ideas, things where I told the team, hey, why not have the main character throw a carpet from the floor up and it becomes a portal, and we then move into the next scene. Stuff like that for me as a director would be super tricky to communicate to my team, even with a couple of drawings. It would be super tough to kind of visualize and explain what I have in mind. And in Quill, I can just go in there for like 5 minutes, do this animation, and basically, plan it out already in 3D, and therefore have such an easy way to communicate my vision to the team, which is always the most important thing to nail as a director, that communication for your team to really get your vision and then execute, right? Quill to me is the best communication tool when it comes to animation production. And then one more thing here, where I'm not going to go too deep into that, but another way of me having to come up with compositions and way to guide the viewer through these spaces and do those smooth transitions and kind of do like those long one-er shots, basically, kind of like inspired by Spielberg or Emanuel Lubezki, those types of long camera shots, but guiding the viewer through these environments and following the characters, which is always a tricky task in VR in general, to give the viewer time to explore the space, to look around and enjoy the 360 space around them, but then also going back to leading them through the story that you want to tell, and always being on that sort of on the edge of giving them enough time to look around, but then also guiding them to where you want them to look at. So another thing that with each episode we really fine-tuned. So yeah, it was a really great learning experience, this project, for me and for the team as well. And as we said, we did 7 episodes, amazing stuff. I'm super proud of the team and what we achieved. And yeah, I mean, many teams and artists, Quill artists and VR artists saw this stuff and were, inspired to do to tell their stories. And we were the first ones to do it. And we came up with techniques and with, ways of VR storytelling. And many others then developed it further. So really rewarding project all around. And it is all free. The best thing about it, or another cool thing about it, is all available for free. All the episodes, together with behind the scenes content, is available in an app called Theater Elsewhere, which is freely available and even, I believe, pre-installed on each Meta Quest headset. And you can go in there and just watch hours and hours of content, not just our series, but other VR experiences, series, shorts, or just simple animations from hundreds and thousands of other artists. So amazing tool and a great way for us to share our experience. And actually, our episodes and all the pieces that are in there are all exported directly out of Quill, directly out of the program up onto the app. So an entire episode is just one master file, basically, that gets exported into Theater Elsewhere. As Alex said in the beginning, VR nowadays, is a little bit on the lower end of excitement, I guess. Now all the talk is about AI, and AI is a new thing, and everybody's jumping on it. And us artists, we are a little bit worried, and we don't know where it is all headed. And after we finished Soda Island, as a team, we realized, even though we've done really cool stuff, outside of our VR and Quill bubble, we were kind of invisible in the space, right? Nobody knew what we were doing, because if you don't have a VR headset, you cannot watch this stuff, and it's tricky for us to explain the work that we're doing, through exporting it into a 2D video, right? That the stuff that we were doing, the VR experiences, they were specifically done to be watched in VR, and outside of our bubble, nobody really got it. So I set out to trying to communicate to the broader audience and to the rest of the industry what VR can do outside of the VR experiences, and how you can use that tool to do amazing animations and just to be faster in the space. So 1.5 years ago, I started posting on Instagram a couple of reels that showcase different styles of painting, different types of animations, either photorealistic or more, stylized, showcasing different styles that Quill can achieve, but also showcasing sort of the behind the scenes look of not only how immersive the pieces are for the viewer in VR, but also how immersive it is as an artist to work in it, right? Because you're painting a world all around you. And I'm trying to showcase and make it understandable, I guess, through those reels. I'm really showcasing sort of the process, right, of sketching those lines that you can actually paint in 3D space, that you can easily manipulate those objects, and a painting like this takes maybe 4 hours to do from start to finish. We're actually gonna in like 5 minutes we're gonna jump into that Quill file, so stay tuned for that. And even the animation of the butterfly is done. Is handmade. I just grab the wings and I animate them by myself, no rigs or anything involved. The butterflies in the background are just simple, brush strokes that I'm going to showcase how to do. It is all like so amazing to work, and you're painting this forest all around you. One more to, you know, bring it home.
T'es la meilleure chose qui m'est arrivée, mais aussi la pire chose qui m'est arrivée. Ce jour où je t'ai rencontré, j'aurais peut-être préféré que ce jour ne soit jamais arrivé. Tu sais ce qu'on dit, sois près de tes amis les plus chers, mais aussi
encore plus près de tes adversaires.
Mais ma meilleure ennemie c'est toi, puis moi. Le pire c'est toi et moi.
Mais si tu cherches encore la voie, oublie-moi. Le pire c'est toi et moi. Pourquoi ton prénom me blesse quand il se cache? Quand j'entends ton prénom, je t'avais dit, ne regarde pas en arrière, le passé te suit, te fait la guerre.
Mais ma meilleure ennemie c'est toi, puis moi. Le pire c'est toi et moi.
Hey, that was me. You know, once again, like showcasing like from the first sketch to the final process. And obviously some shots here and there are a little bit faked when I, you know, touch the grass and it's moving. Obviously that is not the case in Quill, unfortunately, not yet, that you can actually, you know, interact with the objects. But again, I'm trying to showcase how it feels like. It feels like you are in there in the space, and you can basically almost touch the objects that you're painting. That is really that feeling that I want to portray. And then, you know, at the same time, there are ways to kind of fake certain things here and there in Quill. You know, this is me like just on a simple green screen, just grabbing the controller and then painting a water around it, but really in a fake way. It's simply just 2D animation kind of on separate layers. And I make it look like there's a water surface, but there really is not. And then on the other hand, as I said, like the shot where I touch the leaves there, this is me just, you know, another recording of the hand. And then I just said, hey, let's paint a little thumb in the foreground to make it look like I'm reaching for it. So simple tricks like that. I'm not a great TD. I'm not a great VFX artist. You know, 10 years ago, I wanted to become a VFX artist, but nowadays I'm the guy in you know, in the cave with my cave drawings, doing it very manually, all my little tricks and, you know, tips and tricks, but it works, right? Especially for Instagram, showcasing what VR can do, what Quill is capable of, if you give it, you know, into the right hands, and if we grow this community. And yes, there are vertical videos, I know, but that's the world we live in now. It's funny that I went from 2D compositions to full 360 VR composition and then back to vertical videos. So, you know, I've done it all. I've been in the trenches. But through these videos, through these reels, and some of them becoming, you know, getting a lot of views, getting viral, I got a lot of attention. And I realized, yeah, there are ways to grow this community, to get VR, you know, back into the limelight, and to showcase what we can do if we, you know, grow this, and if we become more and more artists. So if you want to, you know, join that journey of mine and of ours, then you can follow me on Instagram, and you can also take a look at the course that I've done. This one being the VR Painting Foundations course, specifically about the VR painting aspect. I'm still working on the VR animation part, and you can, you know, watch that or visit that at vrpaintingcourse.com. And I'm going over basically the whole introduction of Quill and VR in general, and going over the basic tools, how to draw, and then doing more and more like advanced techniques. So basically all I know about VR painting, I want to put into that course. That's out, and you can take a look at vrpaintingcourse.com. And one last thing that I want to showcase every time, because it's still 5 years ago that I did this piece, but before we go into Quill and show stuff for real, I want to showcase this piece. I actually did this before we started Sword Island. This was way back in the day, but still one of my favorite pieces that I've done. And as you can see, another IP that we all very much know, Spider-Verse, a little recreation of one of the scenes there.
When do I know I'm Spider-Man? You won't. That's all it is, Miles. A leap of faith.
Like, what's up, danger? If I'm waiting, it's on my phone. If I sound lazy, just ignore my tone. Cause I'm always gonna answer when you call my phone. Like, what's up, danger? Can't stop me now.
So yeah, that is that. Once again, like that, this was 5 years ago that I did this piece. Kind of my answer to all the people saying, yeah, you know, Quill is cool and all, but it has this certain style. You know, it always looks like Quill. It has those brush strokes, this like bunch of sausages slapped together, and it, you know, it has this style. But this was me showcasing, yeah, you know, if you take your time and come up with those very specific techniques, you know, you can make Quill look anything. And yeah, so obviously Quill isn't meant to be, you know, for polished animation like this specifically, for like a, you know, feature film necessarily. It could be, but, you know, it would take some time and a lot of people to get there. But as I'm going to showcase now, Quill is, for me, specifically valuable in the early process, in the storyboarding and Previz process. So let me actually stop talking about it and actually showcasing it. So let's switch to Quill. So do this. There you go. So now you should see Quill. Yep. So let's go in there. All right. And as I said, we are in the file that I just showcased, the butterfly file. And if I, you know, press play, we can see it's actually slightly moving. It is animated, and even some of the little particles back here, they're all moving very slightly. And this is all, you know, super simple animation that I can do. And even all of this stuff right here that you've seen in the reel, these are just simple, you know, brush strokes. Go in there, and I can do this, and then, you know, just draw like this, or do it the more strategic way and actually create a little asset list on the side here of like trees and, you know, little random brush strokes of leaves and grass, and then simply, you know, populate the scene like this. This file actually is the one in the last module of my course that we are painting like from the start to this. So I'm not gonna, you know, show you the whole process right now. But as I said, like looking at this butterfly, for example, if I grab his wing, the animation of this wing is really just me taking this, like putting all of these brush strokes into one group here, and then, you know, being able to basically move the pivot of this group down there to where the wing sort of touches the body, and then I can freely rotate that. And the way I do this animation is literally just in real time, grabbing the wing and then moving it like this. And then it is, you know, just done. It is it's gonna get recorded in real time, and there's no rig involved. It's just, you know, the proper grouping and basically motion capturing myself, my own movement of my hand, and, you know, that's it. And then I could basically take the entire butterfly and let's just, you know, move it up and let it fly away. That's really how I animated the final reel. So there you go. And quickly jumping to the next one. This is a similar environment here, but a totally different project, and not Solar Island, even though it looks very similar. This is a project I did last year, one of the scenes, and you can see here also like talking about effects, right? We have this the water splash coming in and multiple layers here. You know, this main layer right here, and then a couple of bubbles, and then those ripples. Forming this effect, and then this effect creating the trees, which is very nice. And then looking at this right here, the way the water works. This is, once again, just an empty layer with empty frames. And then basically, let me do this. I go in here, create a new layer, and then just a bunch of empty frames. I loop them. And then I just choose a color. Let's actually, you know, take a color that is visible, the yellow here. And then I can come in here and basically paint into this layer. Oh shit, wait. Oh, 1 second. Oh, this is looped like this. 1 second. There you go. Okay. So now I go in here and I basically do the same sort of brush strokes. Right? This is just me, you know, wiggling just like this. And then I can do the same effect here that I did with those blue brush strokes. And I can, you know, have water come down like this. This is me really like painting in real time, and those brushstrokes being recorded in real time, and then just very carefully, you know, doing those little ripples or going along the edge here. And that's all I'm doing for these types of animations, which is amazing. Being able to produce this type of, you know, stylized water effect in real time, and then at the same time also being able to grab this. Let's actually grab the actual layer here. Being able to select all, and then theoretically I could use the grab tool, which is kind of like a morph tool, and I could grab all of this. Now it's kind of laggy because it's a big file here, and I could just stretch it like this, you know, and have some weird stuff happening just like this. I could basically deform the already animated thing. It's kind of like, I imagine like you have a big node tree in Houdini, and then you add another node that can transform it completely, and this way you can modulate what you already animated. Or, you know, I could just go in here and let it rain. Boom. Just like this. Tap, 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 tap. There you go. And we can make it rain in real time, which is amazing. I don't have to, you know, have to simulate the rain or whatever. I can just make it rain in a minute. So there you go. The file is a little bit laggy for me, so let me actually open a smaller file and talk more specifically about the effects, and then talking about sort of the early Previz and storyboarding process. This is another project we did years ago as Studio Cyro for Bad Bunny, a music artist, for there you go. The show that he had, you know, the stage show. And those were some of the visuals, and they wanted to have some stylized, like trippy, you know, background stuff happening. So we had some effects like this, for example, the water effect, where once again, this is just me painting those brush strokes. And as you can see, like this is just one brush stroke here. And I painted this as a static wave, basically. And then going in here once again with the grab tool, or even the nudge tool, and then kind of rippling this so that it moves like up and down to create that sort of, you know, wavy effect. I did this with a couple of layers here, and then kind of took the whole thing, just like this. Oops. And then, let's actually do this. And then once again, took the grab tool and could just deform it in real time. Basically, let it run and then... And this is how we did then this effect right here. Kind of a looping, crashing wave, which would be tricky to do in like 2D animation or even in 3D to get this sort of stylized look. And in Quill, it takes 5 minutes to come up with the technique, and then you have so much like freedom to just do your own style basically, and motion capture your own hand movement to do a wave, which is really cool. And if I wanted to, like, this could be an amazing tool to once again communicate to your team, to your effects guys, what you want from them, and communicating sort of the style of the foam that you want, and I don't know, the general look of the water, and then they can go ahead, do a proper simulation and go from there. But once again, this takes no effort really to do. Obviously, you have to know your way around Quill, but then it's super easy to create this stuff very quickly. And also for this, for the clouds here, we went for like a trippy, just some so-called anim brush that I showcased earlier. Once again, the same thing. It's just lines that are painted like this. But then they said, yeah, we want to have it a little bit more smooth and not as crazy as this. So then I created some smooth moving clouds like this. And for this, I did a really weird setup where I had to this. Let's break it down here. Basically, just a bunch of rotating, spheres, just like this. And you can make them rotate in a linear way so that they loop properly. And then I just layered them on top of each other, just a bunch of them, so that you get this sort of effect. And when you bake it down, you can then paint on top of it, and you can give it any color. Let's see, let's do this. So now go in here, right? I paint on all of the frames basically. And now I can do some really interesting stuff like this. And yeah. And once again, I can also just go in here and transform it like crazy and get some super weird, stuff going on. Like, sure, why not? So that's also the fun thing. And one of the most basic principles about Quill that one has to understand, that going from a small piece, a puzzle piece, and like detailing that and then duplicating that around to get the bigger picture, which I guess is not only good to do in Quill, but also in any other like 3D tool or in animation, that if you want to have your painting, your scene look very detailed, just detail one little piece and then scatter it around. And same here, just going off of one little object, duplicating that, and then creating some interesting effects like these. So, those were some of the effects. I could, if we have some time, I could basically do some from scratch, showcasing like a smoke cloud or something. But to quickly go over to the previous process, let me simply open a new scene, maybe to have a more clean Quill file and hopefully slightly less laggy, which should be fine. And then let me create a simple environment. Give me like 10 seconds. Once again, I'm gonna just create some random brush strokes, just something to go off of. Let me make them gray here to see them properly. There you go. And let's do this. So if I put in the wireframe, it's just super low poly brush strokes here. And then I'm going to duplicate them just like this. Just randomly. I don't, there you go. Just to have something. And then I'm just going to stretch this and move it with my grab tool. So again, the grab tool is a funny you know, sort of like a sculpting tool in a way. And then let's do something like this. And now if I turn off the wireframe and actually give it some color here, there you go. I now paint in some, you know, some black to give it basically almost like a depth pass. And if I now take the whole thing again and just rotate it a bit more, I can, you know, put in some more, I don't know, texture, I guess. And there you go. And this way, I guess we have some sort of a tunnel. So let's create a little scene in the tunnel. And actually, let's make a nice foreground element here. Because, you know, we want a composition going on. And then typical sort of stuff hanging down. There you go. All right. Then we can place the camera. Like so. It's just a camera, kind of, you know, actually looks like a camera that I can place here. I can zoom, or rather just scale the camera in and out. And it's really just like me holding a camera in this space. And then I can actually see the camera looking through the monitor here. And when I move the camera, I can see what's going on. And then the cool thing is, you know, I can place the camera in different positions and test the 3D space this way. And let's now put in some characters. For the sake of this, to make it easily, you know, visible, I guess. Let's stick with black for now, because these are storyboards, right? We're gonna these are just super simple. Let's make this a guy. Maybe he has a weapon like this, right? And let's put him back here. Let's give him, you know, there you go. All right. So in terms of silhouette, it works fine. Obviously, we could make a proper character, and it would take a couple of minutes. But you know, since we're just sketching here, we can. This should be enough. Let's put him in the back there, around the corner, and then I have this recording thing on. And now, if I move him, right, I'm grabbing him as a layer. If I now move him into place and kind of look through the camera. There you go. So this animation now is already recorded in real time. So I let him come in and then stop, and maybe he sees something and then he runs away. And if I want to, I can even delete that second part, because I want him to kind of go closer to the camera. Boom. Something like this. So let's look into the camera now. There we go. He's basically walking straight into the camera. And once again, I could basically duplicate this camera as if I want to, through it from a different angle, right? I can make it look like this and do like multiple iterations of this, and even iterations of his movement, multiple iterations within a minute, right? I can then, let's say, have like a rock or something coming down, because he sees something and then has to run away. So let's give him some rocks back there, or maybe even in the foreground, because it's, you know, just some stuff coming down. And same thing. Boom. You know. Maybe he reacts a little bit earlier. There you go. And now we have the scene. There you go, right? Obviously, if you have a proper scene in mind, you know, you could, you know, plan it out better. This is just me rambling and coming up with something on the spot, which is also super fun, you know, the sort of stream of consciousness filmmaking. You just, while you are in the space and, you know, while you are in this environment, while the characters are standing literally next to you, you come up with those ideas on the spot, and you can just, you know, play with those ideas and, you know, figure out your story while you're in Quill. So there you go. You know, you could go further. You could have some more animation on the character, like just for the sake of it. this character right here is just on one layer and the layer itself is animated, but I could give him, another pose where he maybe, does like a whatever, a fighter pose or something, right? So now he goes from this pose to this pose, and I could do, if I want to, like an in-between where maybe we have some, like a, smear frame or something going on, and maybe like something like this, and then he's like, that's how easily it's animated, right? There you go. Looking through this again, one more time. Our awesome scene that we just created. And there you go. I mean, it's readable, right? And doing this, like imagining what you would do, what you would have to do in a typical process of drawing these sketches as storyboards, having to put them into Premiere, having to edit them, the timing of the rocks, the timing of him moving, all of that. I can just do it by hand, literally here, and it's just done immediately. So there you go. And while we're at it, let's quickly showcase the process for the effects, which are shown earlier, just kind of from scratch. So once again, we have this empty layer. And if I wanted to have, let's say, like a smoke effect in here, let's do it on the side and then put it in there for you to see it better. Once again, I just go with my anim brush, and let's make it a little bit longer, like this. Just a couple of these to fill it up, basically. Boom, 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 boom. And then we could also just grab all of it and then move it up a little bit to kind of fill up the space. There you go. All right. It's not perfect. There's a little bit of glitching going on because of the lag, but that's fine. There you go. All right. Obviously, this is just all one color, so I can now, once again, grab all of this and then, grab some of this color and then make it gray, or just go in there and just go in there, and now we can actually see what's happening. Some of that, oops, oh no, I didn't grab all of it. One sec. Select all. There you go. Oops. Wait, what? Oh, maybe this is not. Let's see. Okay, now it's working. Okay. There you go. And this way we have our nice little smoke going on. And now, once again, I can go in there with grab tool and I can just give it a shape, which is super fun. There you go. Boom. And we have our smoke. And now if I want to, I could just, once again, just give it some more, like wiggle it and make it, I don't know, like a tornado or something, because why not? Boop, 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 boop. And that's one thing you have to do in Quill. You always have to do those sound effects to make it, look nice. Da, 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 da. All right. And now, one last thing, go in there and maybe even make those lower brushstrokes thinner. And there, for whatever reason, now we have a tornado in our in our thing. So sure, there you go. All right, that is that. Let him walk through there. We could have done maybe a fire or something that makes more sense, but I don't care. It's my story. So all right, you've seen how easy it is to create a simple scene. A simple sort of vignette like this, putting a character in there, letting them move literally in real time by puppeteering the characters through space. It's simple and easy to do, effects, simple effects. And the main thing here that I want to showcase is using this as a tool super early on, maybe even while you are writing your script, wanting to sketch a scene, wanting to kind of communicate what you have in mind, your vision, communicating that to the team, and maybe even doing like concept art of your environments already in 3D in Quill for the 3D modeler who has to model it properly, to already have a 3D reference rather than just a 2D painting that they have to translate. Even that is an amazing thing to have, and it's going to make, normal, like typical 3D production so much more streamlined. And I'm always saying, like, put one Quill artist into any studio, big or small, doesn't matter. You're going to save so much time and money. And as a last point that I want to make here, looking at all the AI stuff that's coming up, obviously it's exciting and it's interesting, and especially for producers to save some money and make things easier for themselves. To me, as an artist, VR is kind of the last man standing in terms of being the most efficient you can be, the most streamlined in terms of you having an idea in your mind and bringing that onto the screen immediately. I cannot think of a faster way to do it other than in VR or using AI, right? And therefore, like, I'm literally using my body, my hand. It is handmade art that I'm creating, and basically being the last man, on the front lines of the war against the AI crap that's heading, towards us. So it is fascinating what's happening right now. And best case scenario, maybe in a world like a couple of years from now, where we could maybe combine the strengths of these tools of VR, of a human, being in VR, interacting with their art, and creating very effectively, and maybe 10% of AI polish or something on top. There is a world where this could work, and we'll see where it goes. But I'm fine with this world right now, and I'm very much having fun creating like this, prototyping games, that sort of stuff that I'm doing a lot more. Like, Quill is so useful for that stuff as well. If you have something very specifically in mind that you're working on, or where you could see Quill helping, maybe I can even showcase something that would help directly in Quill, or I could just answer your question. That's also good. All right, that's it from me.
Thank you very much, Dan. That was impressive. Really, really cool. I was stunned, to be honest. Not always happening that we're watching how, especially the speed, how you create things, I found very impressive, and the quality also at the same time. Let me give a little bit of bow before we dive into the Q&A to the TD element here. I think important is, this was obviously a little bit more artistic, but the important part is, independent of that, VR is an interesting place for Previz and art and so on. It's also important to understand that the job of every technical person is to understand what is out there, including Quill and any VR tool and so on, understand the possibilities and recommended possibilities to artists, to directors, to producers, and say, hey, I know, guys, you don't know VR, but there's this thing maybe Dan offers. Let us explore this for our next project to improve our pipeline, to improve our iteration speed, to improve that. Yes, it will take maybe a moment for someone to learn it, or we need to bring a Quill artist or something. And so that is very, very important for every technical person, also to look at people like artists and see the potential, and have it in the back of your mind of, hey, this is an interesting software. Hey, this is an interesting technique. Hey, this is an interesting workflow. And that is the one part that I wanted also to communicate with Dan here. Besides the art part, is also the part of new workflows. This is a new workflow that you can integrate into every production, basically, from Previz to actual making a video game and so on. The second part is, this kind of project will still, depending on what you do exactly, require some kind of technical support. There is a certain level of technical support that is required, either through just the normal art flow of my computer is crashing constantly, performance, whatever. Can you write me maybe a tool even? I'm not sure how Quill works with plugins and scripting particularly, but I'm pretty sure there is some kind of connection where you can probably write, something a simpler simplification tool or some summary tool where you just click and then you have a wavy thing, like, your kind of dissolvers and fires and so on. So this is also the other side of where you, as a technical, for example, person, not only as an artist, can dive into that. You can recommend this as a workflow. You can create opportunities, and you can help artists to successfully using these tools by making them available, by helping them with scripts and tools and support, basically. And so that is also the other part that I just want to showcase, because again, there's also a TD Meetup, so I want to bring that as well a little bit into that.
Speaking to what you just said in terms of new workflows and kind of having a look out at what's happening, not just in the TD space and the VFX space, but the VR space is also growing. Like, there's not just Quill out there. Yes, it is the best tool in terms of VR painting and animation, but there's currently a tool being created in Blender off of Grease Pencil. They're basically trying to use the tech of Grease Pencil to create Grease Pencil VR, kind of having a Quill-like program inside of Blender directly, which would certainly open up so many more eyes on what's happening in this space, because there are many more Blender users. And in terms of the open source aspect of it, there's going to be many artists and TDs who would want to write tools for that and to kind of streamline those workflows. Because I see a lot of potential there being done. I know the people who are working on this, they're super talented, and also like we all know the possibilities that this could give us. And yes, it is still very early on, and Quill is miles ahead, and certainly the reference of where they want to go. But I'm going to be there once they reach that level, and I might just jump over maybe and bring all my Quill knowledge to Blender and help all those Blender guys as well to use this workflow, because it's because as you said, like Quill itself is somewhat separate in terms of the way it is coded. It's not so easy to just write tools and kind of make mods of Quill. There are artists who do external tools, or like importers to import, for example, videos into Quill, that sort of stuff. And we have our Discord community where we share those tools and workflows. But once we could have some Quill-like thing inside of Blender, for example, using the Grease Pencil thing, then it would open up so much more possibility as well. So
you said also something that I always say, basically, for TDs, you should bring at least like if you want to improve your project, just bring at least a TD or multiple TDs into your project, because they will improve your workflow, your time, your speed, whatever. And that was basically one of the arguments you also mentioned, is like this is like, especially the way that you approach it, this is a way in certain aspects of the production that if you have the right person there, it can improve your pre-production extremely. And I think also the important part that you mentioned, and that's a little bit sometimes undervalued, is the vision. That a lot of people, like, sometimes it's really hard to communicate exactly the feeling of something. And I think that is also the biggest downside in the production, is everyone will interpret an image in different ways, basically. And then we'll have these like mishmash of results, basically. The lighting artist sees it a little bit more in, Tim Burton style. The other artist sees it more in someone other style, because it's just a flat 2D image. But if you do it like this, on one side, it has a little bit of a mood board feeling very fast on one side. But on the other side, because you can like move around and stuff, you can grasp more the actual feeling of the whole environment, versus just the 2D image that basically you can just make one line and then it is a person, and you don't need to everyone has to interpret what kind of person this is, basically. I have a question, because we worked on Pet C, basically. You did the directing there. If you would go back to this project now, like if they ask you, hey, season, I don't know which we are now, 4, 5, 6, if they say, hey, would you do directing of this? And you say, cool, happy to, great project, great people. How would you use Quill, or would you use Quill, and how would you use Quill for that project? Would you
use it purely for Previz, or would you even integrate it into the actual final product in some ways?
I would certainly use it definitely for the pre-production or like the early production of the storyboard, animatic, and Previz phase, because that was the majority of work that I was doing at Petsy actually, and guiding the storyboarder to do the hundreds of storyboards literally every day, and me kind of having to go into Premiere and having to edit them, and putting the sound
I think,
in.
I think that's the most time I seen you do anything. You were most of the time I saw you in Premiere. That was actually I think every time I saw you watching you over your shoulder, I think you were always in Premiere basically.
Yeah, and that's the thing, like especially in a project like this where you are writing the script while you are doing the concept the concept art, but also the storyboards. You're constantly iterating on your ideas, and if you do it with storyboards, obviously I love storyboarders and they do amazing work, but it's tricky to go back and forth. Let's say, okay, I like the overall scene, but we want to put the camera somewhere else. Like we want to have a top-down view or whatever. Like you would have to redraw all of these drawings. It is a tricky one to get that. Especially like the performance that storyboarders get very well in terms of like when you have a dialogue and they just do simple sketches, but you can read the facial expressions very well. So that is very valuable to have storyboarders for that. But when it gets to maybe even the process before that, to really just come up with the shots and the overall, just the scenes, the layouts for those scenes, to simply plan that in Quill in 3D space, and then the stuff that I just did by animating, just simply moving blobs through space to showcase the rough timing. And you could basically, maybe even if you have a dialogue going on with like two people walking or something, you would just shake them, to showcase who is talking. I guess that would already be enough for me in a wide shot, and plan out the shots this way rather than having to do that many drawings and this so much like snipping together images to make videos. I could iterate in Quill so much faster, right? And save a lot of time. And the more you can iterate on your idea, the faster you can iterate, the better your end product is going to be. And Quill is just faster than Photoshop plus Maya plus Premiere altogether, because you have all of these programs all in one timeline basically in Quill. So it's always a complicated thing to have in terms of like, yeah, I could do the work of 3 artists by myself and be faster. It's the same thing with AI being like, AI is stealing the jobs basically. I could never do the work that a storyboarder is doing with dialogues and facial expressions and that sort of stuff. That would take longer in Quill to do specifically like that. So there's always going to be place for the artists to kind of do the specific work that they are needed for the most. But I don't want a storyboarder to have to redraw a wide shot 10 times because I cannot make up my mind. I want them to focus on the things that they are the best at and where we need them the most. And then a layout artist in 3D to take my crappy blobs that are moving through space and put the 3D characters on top as a reference or as a first stage for the animation for the animators. But then me as a director doing those changes myself and testing them myself and kind of iterating with myself rather than having to communicate that with a team and then everybody waiting on everybody. I feel like through Quill, even though it is a little bit of a bottleneck if you just have 1 or 2 Quill artists in a big team, it still saves so much time, and to me it's just much more streamlined in terms of me coming up with my scene and then being able to communicate that with the rest of the team.
In terms of the next step, because you're more mainly focused on storyboard and mood board, is there especially a project like Petsy, which is already very stylized and basic shading and stuff? Do you see a project like this specifically any value of using Quill actually in the production? Meaning, some background stuff, maybe water splashing into the character's face or something like that. Maybe not the main character or something stuff, but let's say secondary background effects or something like that.
I think in like for Petsy specifically, it was all the models were sort of blobby and sort of had round edges. I could see maybe some things being doable in terms of the modeling, just using Quill brushstrokes. But maybe the thing is with if you want to render something out of Quill or like export the Quill objects and render them, you always see those brushstrokes. It's never a clean mesh. It's just brushstrokes next to each other, and it's going to be like sausages. And especially with lighting, you're going to see those edges. So it would be very specifically for like leaves or that sort of stuff, or like branches, right? But I don't think you're going to save too much time if you just have a modeler doing that stuff anyways, really depending on the project, obviously. But for effects, I could definitely see it. If you have very stylized effects that, even if it's like water effects that should look like clay animation, because in Petsy we had similar things happening where some effects were just very stylized and looked very sort of claymation style in some way. And for that, you could definitely use it. And one thing I did multiple times actually is exporting Quill animation, which is, you can export it in FBX, OBJ, or Alembics. Alembics obviously then for animations. And if it's just a simple effect, like a smoke effect or something that I did, kind of what I did just now, but better, you could use that as the volume for your actual simulation if you want to. So you could just grab the Quill, sort of rough Quill meshes, but animated meshes with the proper timing and everything, and with colors, and then use that to either just art direct the effects that you want to achieve, or just actually use that as the volumes and then just apply a different shader to it. So you can use that stuff. Yeah,
I can totally see it in through this tier. I think that was like the perfect Quill feeling, because it already has this like aqua color kind of feeling. So cool.
Exactly.
We have two questions. Biju, hello Dan. It is quite impressive to see the way you are painting as a real painter to create content. How long is it comfortable to work in VR before fatigue sets in? Additionally, does Quill support painting directly onto video footage? Thanks.
First of all, that's always the question that I get. Do I not get?
I actually have it also on my list of how long.
It's different for different people. Like I give a lot of workshops also, not only just online now, but on location. I've done it for since the first day I knew Quill myself. I've given workshops at universities, and people are different. Some just need a day to kind of acclimate, or I guess, or kind of get used to VR if they haven't used VR at all before. And, sometimes you get headaches. I always say, like, take some breaks, drink some water. But for myself, I've been in Quill for 10, 12 hours, obviously more like back in the day when I was like hustling like every night and stuff. Now I'm also doing more like producing work and stuff, and I'm not in VR as long, but I could. And I back then I actually trained myself to never have any issues. I was doing Quill sessions, but then also in between I played games where I did like barrel rolls in like spaceships in VR. I did like loopings and that sort of stuff to never get sick. And a couple of years later, I had to direct our third episode where we were driving spaceships through quantum space. So I shouldn't have been the right person to actually direct that, because I never have issues in VR, but many viewers have. But luckily enough, that episode went well, and nobody really had issues with those crazy moves that we were doing. But I mean, you kind of just get used to it after a while. And I personally never have any issues with that, even though years, like I think 2 years before I actually started Quill, I did a little VR project. And in that one, sort of in crunch time, like was a student project, right? In crunch time, days before we had to finish, I was working in Quill, I was working in VR, and at some time I just fell asleep. And then I woke up in VR space. And like, that is certainly not something that I want to recommend. So, because your brain just doesn't know where you're at. You think you're still dreaming. And yeah, if you're sleepy, definitely take off the headset and just, take a break or just go to sleep. But yeah, it's all good. What was the second question again?
Does Quill support painting directly onto video footage?
I guess you would have to define specifically what you mean. I can. There are ways to import video footage as reference, as timing reference, or just you could have like a high res video and then animate on top, kind of like a 2D animation. You could totally do that. You could use Quill as a simple 2D animation tool, as like a Toon Boom or something, if you want to. I've done the reel I shared, the arcane painting was me, like all the footage that you saw of me and my hands drawing. Those were video footage layers that I put directly into Quill. There was no like pumping or anything done in a third tool. This was all done in Quill. Just video footage, like comped or like green screen, alpha removed footage, and I put it into Quill and then painted on top. Right. So that worked. You can do some really interesting looking things with that. But I would need to know specifically what you want to achieve, and then maybe I can give you some tips specifically for that.
Awesome. Marco, thank you for sharing all that with us. Then regarding equipment, do you have any VR glasses that you recommend for beginners?
Will is working with specifically with Meta Quest headsets. So if you have a Vive or the Apple glasses, it won't work. But like Meta Quest 2 to 3, they all work fine. I don't recommend any, like I use all of them. I used like literally from the first Oculus device, the Oculus Rift back then, before we had the Quest. I was working with that for I think the first 2 episodes of Soda Island, and the lenses were terrible. Like everything was blurred for me, but I was the director, right? I only saw half of what we were actually doing before I got the Quest, and they were so much more crisp. But I would say like you can get a Meta Quest 2, I think very cheap nowadays. But I would actually recommend the 3S, the sort of the more the smaller version / like more lightweight version of the 3, which is the most advanced one or the most current one. The 3S is a little bit more affordable. I don't know exactly the price that it is right now, but it can do anything that the other headsets can do as well. And in terms of the tech, like a PC that you need for it, you don't need a crazy PC. I was working with an old laptop back in the day on Quill, and it's all working fine. So actually, in my course, if you actually want to get into Quill and learn about it more specifically, in my course, I have all the specific specs and how to install Quill and go through the process of getting into VR and that sort of stuff.
How like technical is it as a single person using it? Because you have all this kind of setup and whatever, and how much technical support do you need in a real production? As you did, like you have movies. Like, do you need someone to help you in certain aspects of the production technical side, or is it just pure artists just coming together and punching it out or something like that? So how much technical for a single artist, and how much technical is it actually to you to be in a production of this kind of animation films that you did before?
As a single artist, I would say Quill to me is the most straightforward and intuitive tool that I could think of, because you're literally using your hands. You have a number of buttons that you have and your menus that are very simple, like compared to like Blender or Maya, where you have thousands of buttons and you don't know what each of them is doing. So in Quill, you just have a handful of buttons on your controllers that you have to press, and certain combinations that you want to just get used to with your muscle memory. But usually in my workshops, after the first 2 days, my students can just stop thinking about the buttons they have to press and start thinking about what they want to paint and want to achieve, because the muscle memory really sets in quickly, and then you can just start creating. So it's the least technical tool you could think of. As I said, it's like you're a caveman painting, right? You're not thinking that you're using a tool, even though you have a high-tech VR headset on your head. So that's the good point about jumping into it. You don't need to be a technical guy to understand it. But on the other hand, if you want to implement it into a production, it really depends on the production itself. Like if it is a big, let's say, Disney project, right? Like a big 3D feature film or something, or if it's a short that wants to do like abstract, maybe painterly 2D looking stuff. It very much depends on how you want to use Quill and implement it into the pipeline. And, depending on the project, you always have a technical team on the side. And then as a Quill artist, it's up to you to communicate what you can give them, sort of, in terms of the files that you can give them, the FBX, the Alembics, USDs, like, and how they can maybe use that to develop it further with shaders and that sort of stuff. So, it's hard to say like how technical it is if I don't know how technical the project is. But that's a good thing also. A beneficial thing that I do, that I've been a generalist. I've been involved with many different types of projects. And I'm a good middleman in terms of knowing what I need to do as an artist and what the artist's team has to do. And then knowing what the TDs, the technical guys, the pipeline guys, and the render guys, right, what they need and how to kind of get there. And that's also why I start doing more consulting with teams wanting to implement Quill and helping them achieve that, and being sort of the trainer in terms of telling them, oh, Quill can do that and you can be more efficient in that, but then you need a little bit more help and you need specific workflows to use it in your pipeline. So unfortunately, there is no one way out there or like a tutorial that you can watch. It's very much dependent on the specific project.
I think if you do something for yourself, it sounds like besides the hardware stuff and setting things up, it's very much straightforward, like a Photoshop basically. Let's go. While in a production, I think there's like so many layers that it could be. It's like maybe, as you said, you say, hey, I want to bring it into the layout so that people can literally like have it in their Mayas and can navigate it. And so that's where, for example, like a import-export script would be nice to have, and so on. So that's also what we always recommend everyone who is interested into going into technical artist, technical directing roles. Problem solving is the key to this one. And I think even especially if you VR, I think when it comes to the production level, especially, it's all about problem solving, figuring things out, transitioning from that environment to that environment. How can it be implemented? Can it be implemented as an effects tool, and so on? So we always recommend the best way to dive into the technical aspect is learning something like Python, because if you learn something like Python, you basically train yourself not only in logical thinking, problem solving, but obviously you have a tool at your disposal to, for example, doing pipeline aspects like writing tools to transition to elements like videos into Quill or outside of Quill or whatever, to integrate it basically. And I think that is what a big part of technical work is, allowing artists to work, to create the art, to create the movie, create the game, and the technical. Every technical aspect of that is mostly about how can we allow artists to just focus on the art and remove all the elements that are boring, that are repetitive, that are about bringing one part to someone else, to a different software, and so on. So yeah, if you guys are interested, join our Python courses. We do every software under the sun. We will do Python for Blender next year also. This will come as well. But we also go into production. We will look into Python for Flow, Python pipeline actually, where maybe we should think about a small section of Quill integration or something like that. Maybe there should be like
coming up next.
Yeah, exactly. I don't think it has an API for that, but let's see. If you are interested, by the way, in the future to join future TD Meetup, if you're not already, just check out our alexanderrichter.com/TD-Meetup, and then you can register. We will do this every month. This month was virtual reality. Next month will be Python challenges. We will do also showreel review or a job application review, and so on and so forth.
Thanks again that I could showcase a little bit, what I was doing, and showcasing that it is a tool that can do a lot. And we have a lot of different artists in our community that are using it for many different workflows. I specifically have been doing a lot of, animation films and VR productions, but we're always searching for new challenges of new teams coming up with ideas and workflows to integrate those types of tools into their maybe like abstract, trippy, film that they want to do, and they want to have some painterly effects here and there. So why not use a 2D painting 3D program like Quill, and have fun with it? And on the one side, it is an interesting tool and an efficient tool, especially in the early process. But when it comes to figuring out new techniques that nobody has done before, a tool like this is super interesting, and integrating that with new workflows, and then sharing those workflows with the bigger community, and that opening up opportunities as well. That is a good thing for us as a community, but also when it comes to funding, oftentimes, for movies, for games, oftentimes, grants are searching for innovative approaches and new, inventions basically in the space, and using VR to animate, to do crazy stuff. Sounds interesting, sounds exciting, and maybe it's going to give you some more opportunities for funding for future projects. So that's another thought as well. So yeah, keep exploring. I'm excited to see, what you guys are up to.
I welcome you to join us live and also watch the previous episodes, and I'll see you on our next TT Meetup.